Good evening. Can time stop? This is a very unusual question, and it is necessary for us to be very clear about which time we are talking. There is the chronological time as shown by the clock. That chronological time also is much questioned with respect to its reality, with respect to any absoluteness about it. In advanced physics, we have the topic of relativity of time. However, here we are talking about stopping or coming to an end of psychological time. Not physicists, not the scientists of modern times, but mystics, poets, philosophers, existence have talked about ending of time, time coming to a stop, and the reference is to psychological time. What is psychological time? It is as simple as this. If two girls are writing an examination, the total time given to either of them is 3 hours, let us say, to answer some questions, complete an answer paper. Let's say the exam is running from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., or as we used to say in olden days, 12 noon, 3 hours examination. At 11:30, both the girls have half an hour time left. That is chronological time. Both the girls, Kamala and Vimala, look at the clock on the wall or look at their own wristwatch and they see, oh, 30 minutes more. After a while, it is only 25 minutes more. After a while, it's only 20 minutes more. That is chronological time. It is the same for both of them. But we can see, depending on the thoughts flowing in their minds, suppose Kamala has already done well. By temperament also she is more balanced. She is not suffering from anxiety or fear. She has a sense of there is a lot of time left. She rechecks answers that she has written. Vimala, in contrast, by nature is very temperamental, very moody, very anxious. And above all, Vimala is very anxious about maybe standing first in the class I want to become a rank holder this time. I want to become a rank holder. See, there is the dimension of wanting to become. This wanting to become the topper of the class, become famous, become much envied. I want people to be jealous of me and whatever. This wanting to become can significantly influence or affect her sense of time. Even if she has pretty much answered as many questions as Kamala did, Vimla, because of her anxiety about will I be accepted, will I be rejected, what will parents talk about me, what will teachers say things about me, you see, in psychological time, there is necessarily the playing of the me, whether it's an examination or a lecture you and I give from some platform or some interview, some challenging situation. There is the objective dimension, then there is the dimension which comes into picture thanks to thinking. That is psychological time. Chronological time is the same for Kamala and Vimala, but so the psychological time is different. Now we again check on this topic. Can time stop? Can psychological time stop? Quickly, let me mention poets have always talked about some beauty, like beauty of nature, beauty of some piece of art, beauty of some piece of poetry, many things, beauty of somebody's response, somebody's action, somebody's behavior. There are lots of beautiful things in life, outside and inside. And don't we say sometimes, don't the poets say sometimes, that this beauty is timeless? When they say it's timeless, two meanings comes to the mind of the listener. One is this is beautiful, this was beautiful, and this will be beautiful. The beauty of this thing is not limited to a period of time, it's a certain duration. It extends both to the past and to the future. That is also fine, but another meaning of timeless implies when you behold that beauty, inside you, time stops. There is no sense of time, sense of the me. There is no sense of the self. There is no judgment about oneself. There is no thought operating. How fortunate I am seeing this. Or how unfortunate I am that yesterday I did not come to see this sunset. So, this labeling process upon ourselves, judging, putting us into a pigeonhole, good or bad, right or wrong, accomplished or a failure. You see, that is a thought process that describes the me. So, when we say something is timeless, something is of certain beauty that is timeless, what is meant is the self in us gets suspended. Therefore, Krishnaji has often said, time, thought, and the self are one. Whereas he has talked about love and death as being one. How can you say love and death are one? Once more, death is not clinical death there. Death is the death of the separate self. A thought saying, haha, I am superior to everybody else today. Finally, I hope people know who I am and lift my collar. That is the creation of the self. And another day, the same person who in whom the self is operational feels so low. All have gone ahead. All have made it. I have lagged behind. So this is the labeling process I'm talking about. Therefore, I don't have much to say on this session, on this topic in this session, but I wish to make when we ask, can time stop? It is no different from asking, can the self go into abeyance? Can the self be suspended? Can we put an end to the self? Don't ask, oh, are you talking about putting an end to the self forever? Or are we talking about putting an end to the self for next 3 days? Today is Thursday. So I put an end to the self. My ego dies from Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday morning when the new working week begins, again my ego attacks. This is all childish exercise. When you think about ending of the self, don't attach duration. Don't attach time period. Just notice the nature of the self, and in seeing the falsehood of the self ends. Seeing the falsehood. In seeing, time ends. In seeing, thought ends. So can time end? Not the time, can time end? This English language is a bit difficult for us at times. Even those of us who have pretty good English are sometimes wondering, should I put the article the here or not? It is said that somebody asked a friend of his, what is time? And that other person had very good English. He said, what is time? That's a very philosophical question. Or you should ask advanced physicists. They will give you a definition of what time is. The person who asked the question is asking, what is the time? He should have used the article the. If you ask what is the time, you know, then we say the time is 6:25. If you ask what is time, that's a very philosophical question. In physics, they define time as or in terms of the traveling of light from point A to B separated by certain distance. In terms of distance on which there is agreement, time is defined. And in physics, when they ask what is distance, what is a millimeter, what is a meter, to answer that scientifically, they use time as the basis. Well, 1 meter is the distance covered by light in so much of time. So time is the basis, distance gets defined. Or distance is the basis, time is defined because space and time are thus interrelated, interwoven. They call it the space-time continuum. But in this matter of psychological time, there is nothing about travel of light, but it is the fact, not fact. If we stay by fact, the self subsides. When we yield to fancy, as the idiom goes, when you and I build castles in the air, we dream of becoming big, famous, much talked about. We dream of becoming the recipients of this award or that trophy, and that is the basis, not travel of time or travel of light. It's not the traveling of light here, but it is the fancy which builds the psychological time. And along with it is fear, is desire, is disappointment, is ambition, is comparison, is competition, a whole lot of psychological dimensions rise. Once the self has appeared, it is like you have disturbed the hornet's nest. Yes. Large number of hornets come and sting you here, sting you there, sting you here. Disturbing the hornet's nest, as you know, is an idiom where you do something and you are in for much trouble. So the self arises, which is no different from thought is at work, which is no different from time is running. So Vimala, who had all the dream of standing first in the university this time, he is afraid. Time is going, is getting over. Ah, she begs of the invigilator, she begs of the person overseeing the examination, Madam, Madam, give me 5 minutes more. And the madam is very strict. She pulls the answer papers from the hands of Vimala and says, No, we cannot give even 1 minute more. Vimala is suffering. You and I suffer sense of defeat, sense of failure. We fear failure. There are many people who get up at 2 a.m. at night, almost get a heart attack because a certain project, certain business venture, certain romance, certain thing which they wanted is not working out. How can I accept this situation? I must win. I must win his hand or her hand. I must become the owner of this property. There is this I. Now, without going very long on it, the question is, can this I end? Can the self end? Can thought end? And therefore, can time end? Therefore, the question we have picked up this evening is no different from, can there be perception without the interference of thought? When there is silence, when there is seeing without there being the shadow of the psychologically created self, wise people say that is when love, that is when we love, when we live with the complete order. Otherwise, thought is the culprit behind So much of disorder. Whether the society recognizes or not, you and I are psychological problems. We have psychological problems. Sometimes we may be highly respected and regarded in the society, but somebody who closely examines our behavior says, "What has made you such a neurotic?" They say there are many words. Sometimes our behavior is psychotic, sometimes our behavior is lunatic, neurotic. There are so many. I will not go into them, nor am I interested in cracking any jokes about them. But certainly, psychological disorders. Even many people who win some Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, etc., are psychological wrecks. They are crazy. But the government or the authorities at a certain time, for certain reasons which are well aligned with their vested interests, award. In every country, there are some distinguished awards. They are given to different people. And I'm not saying all the cases are like that. So some cases of even these much coveted awards are actually very questionable. It is incisive statement, something like, if you have fitted well, if you have conformed well, if you have adjusted well with a sick society, you have adjusted well with a sick society, so everybody appreciates you. But dear sir, dear madam, you have adjusted with a sick society, therefore, somebody who adjusts with a sick society has to be sick. And that sick society with which you have adjusted very well will give you various awards. Various forms of recognition come to you. So those who are awarding you are sick, they are not truly healthy. And you, the recipient who go on the stage and receive that award to the thunderous applause of a large audience, are also sick. Some of Krishnamurti's statements are not to the taste of majority of people. They don't like such statements, but Krishnamurti spoke the truth. In these instances, he spoke the plain truth. Let people like it or let people frown. Let people make a face at such statements. He is not concerned. He has no fear of social acceptance or rejection. When you and I play to the tunes of a sick society, time cannot stop. We really are all the time troubled by the psychological time. Not playing to the tunes of authorities or societies or this friend or that somebody to whom you are very attached, who matters a lot to you. Playing to the tunes of all this, here and there, you may be much appreciated by others, but you are sick. Time cannot end in you. Therefore, ending of time, time coming to a stop, is no different from the erasure of the ego, erasure of the separate self. This is the 2 cents that I can talk about. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. It's a wonderful lecture given by you. Time really stopped. Harshad sir, would you please comment on it?
Yes. Are you able to hear my voice? Hello, Kamleshji.
Yes, sir. Your voice is
Yeah.
very clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Swamiji. Very interesting, very simple, very clear about the two kinds of time. One, you say about chronological time, the time which we measure by the clock, and the time is defined in physics. I was teaching physics, and time is defined as the interval between two events, just like rising of the sun and the setting of the sun. Those are the two events, starting and ending. So the interval between the two is chronological time. And this chronological time also varies according to Einstein's theory of relativity. And a simple example is like if an object or your own body, if it can move very, very fast, the time becomes smaller. And when the object moves at the speed of light, the chronological time stops. That means that if you move at the speed of light, time stops for you, chronological time, and you remain young forever as long as you are traveling with the speed of light. But again, according to relativity, nothing can move at the speed of light. But I think we are not talking about the chronological time. We are talking about psychological time, the time which we feel through thinking. And Einstein again gave an example of this kind of psychological time. And he says, when a young boy is talking with a young, beautiful girl, 1 hour seems like 1 minute to that boy. But if you are standing on a hot plate, 1 minute will feel like 1 hour. So the time doesn't go very fast. When you are bored and tired, time doesn't, and when you are deeply interested in something like doing mathematics or walking in nature or singing, listening to music, time, psychological time doesn't exist. That means you are fully into it. In another way, in Krishnamurti's language, I would say that when you are moving with what is means thinking. When a person is moving with thinking, there is no thinker coming out. There is only watching. And watching of what is, in that there is no thinker, no observer, there is no psychological time. All of us that thinking after we learn a language and we learn how to speak and we gather a lot of knowledge, thinking becomes very habitual. And lots of thoughts are going on one after the other, and we are not aware of it. The whole is mechanical. But if we become aware of thinking, when we become very curious, watch the thoughts, then there is a possibility that the thought doesn't move. Other, but when we become curious to observe our own thought, like when I did after reading a book of Krishnamurti, my mind really stopped. So when I want to watch the beginning of a thought stops. That means the time stops, psychological time stops, and thinking stops. But then when you become unaware, then thinking will again go on like that. So I feel that this question is asked, can time stop? Probably because that time or thinking is creating many problems. Like some people, they remember, they go into the past, something uh, unpleasant thing happened in the past, and those memories of the past keep on coming through thinking. So there's a song in Hindi, भूली हुई यादों मुझे इतना न सताओ, अब चैन से रहने दो, मेरे पास ना आओ. The poet says, all those forgotten memories, please don't come. Don't bother me with all those unpleasant memories. So we ask this question that can thoughts stop? It is because thinking is generally very uncreative, unpleasant. But when something good thing has happened in the past, and then we feel happy to remember something good. So another song in Hindi, जिंदगी भर नहीं भूलेगी वो बरसात की रात, एक अनजान हसीना से हुई मुलाकात. So a poet saw a beautiful woman on a rainy night, and then he is remembering what that happened in the past, in the present. He is remembering and he feels happy. So this thinking can create a pain or it can create pleasure. So both possibility exist in this thinking. Becomes problematic. It creates jealousy, fear, anger. All this comes from thinking, from psychological time, and that is and that is why we ask. We don't want that unpleasant thoughts to come and bother us. But in my view, when there is awareness, when this intelligence is awakened, then thinking is not a problem. Thinking can go on. One can also create thinking. One can create imagination. One can do something creative when there is intelligence or awareness. And so, in my view, thinking is an enemy when it creates all negativity in us, many negative thoughts and feelings, then thinking is an enemy. But otherwise, thinking, through thinking, you can create, you can write beautiful writings or poems, or you can paint, you can do many things, music, all this is possible. So our problem is not thinking is not a problem. Problem is the lack of intelligence or awareness which can see thinking very clearly at its root. That means when anger is arising, can see that anger is arising. And then that seeing, it becomes the action and it stops thinking. So when we are moving with what is, moving with thinking itself and not a thinker coming out from this thinking. Because when a thinker, this observer comes, then it wants to change thinking. But otherwise, moving with thinking, moving with what is, in that there is no duality. And it is like moving on the wave. Like moving on the wave, then you are not disturbed. You are all the time on the top of the wave when you are moving with the wave. So, thinking is a problem when there is a me, this fragment called I or me or ego or self. It arises from thinking, and then it says, I like it, I don't like it. So, our problem is this duality between thinker and thought. Thought, thinking by itself is not a problem as long as it is seen clearly. So, when thinking stops due to a clear seeing, due to awareness, there is no sense of psychological time. And that is beyond pleasure and pain. These poets, they experience pleasure and pain, but happiness is an ending of time when thinking stops and there's pure awareness, pure watching. And in that, one can look at the tree or a bird or anything, and it looks very fresh, very new in the pure observation, where thinking is not there. And so that is why I think many people are interested in spiritual, religion, uh, psychology, to come to that state of pure awareness, which is beyond pleasure and pain, and happiness or a sense of love and beauty exists in such a state. And as Swamiji said, Krishnaji said, when the self is not, that when the thinking is not, when the thinker is not, love is, self is, that is also a beauty. So beauty, happiness, freedom, love, they are same thing actually. And that is the pure awareness without the self, without. So I have said right now enough. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Harshad sir. Anybody else wanted to say something is welcome.
Pradeep,
May I say something?
Pradeep ji.
Please go ahead. Verma ji, please go ahead. I am seeing you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So this topic today, well covered by Swamiji as well as Harshad Bhai. You see, can time stop? Why it has become important topic for today is because psychological, and of course, we know it has been amply clarified that it's psychological time and not chronological time, because it is associated with depletion of energy, ultimately ending up in suffering, ultimately. So that is one thing. When Harshad Bhai was talking, when you are aware of thinking, there is nothing wrong in thinking. When, to my, you see, whatever you may say, reasoning, when I am aware of thinking, thinking stops. If you are caught up in thinking, then thinking itself is not flawless without ego. The very thing that duality is working and thinking is on means I am already self is working, because that's why thinking. Otherwise, thinking as how will you know? So if you are aware of thinking, thinking will stop. This is what I think. So that is one thing. Mind cannot work with the same passion or intensity. Even needs rest, all of us, and it gets it in its own way also. Now, whether you can stop it, you see, and it's a highly subjective matter, very individualistic. I am in a different logical time. All my comrades, all my friends are definitely having a different psychological time, apart from the discussion we are having. So it's a very subjective thing. Each of us will take up this issue, this topic, based on our aspirations and conditionings. There is no doubt about it. Naturally, also, if you see, time will stop ultimately. When you enter into that state of timelessness, so how, whether you are burdened with the time, that is the past, that is the memory, that is the garbage we have collected, everything, the psychological, if it is accumulative, it is adding to that. And then when you enter into that state, and I'm just imagining now what you call death, dying while living. So when you are entering into that, and everybody knows it, probably, most of the people get that indication that now it is, I'm approaching that state. So how will you face that timelessness so greatly emphasized? Otherwise, because for rejuvenation also, brain needs rest. Automatically with the darkness, melatonin will be formed and you will be taken to rest. It's a different thing otherwise also. If you have not lived your days, or if you have not lived your time in the daytime, with your thoughts or aspirations or choices or whatever it is with your life, then a part of that will always be there, that comes in the dream. That also is very clear to most of us, that how dreams come and why do they come, and JJ has already questioned about it. Why do you dream? Because of half, you have not lived the moment fully. So that's why this happens. So timelessness actually, automatically, naturally, brain needs some rest, and it gets it. It knows how to get it. But still, once we realize that whatever I am thinking psychologically now about what I am interested in, and chances of getting that fulfilled, naturally, we'll be very alert and attentive towards that, the possibilities of getting that, or it's a fantasy, or we are only daydreaming. So all those things will end up into some sort of thinking. Although negativity, also it was talked about also today, that don't go for negativities. If it is positive, again, that question came to mind. Through negation, you end into the most positive. So really, when you talk of negativity, one should not be in that wave of negativity. So already duality is there, negative, positive, everything is in my mind and thinking about it. So it has its own consequences. So this topic is definitely very interesting for all of us and very alarming also about the time we are undergoing and we are about to face. Thank you, friends. I have taken enough time. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks. Prasad, sir.
Sir, namaste.
Before I sleep, please say something.
Pardon, sir.
Before I sleep, please say something.
Wonderful. Melatonin.
Don't worry, sir. My talk will put you to...
Wonderful.
Okay, sir. Namaste, sir. This is a wonderful topic. I normally don't like to read anything from K. Read, not that, read in this meeting. Not that I don't like to read separately when I am alone. But when I am in a meeting, I don't like to quote or to read a passage. But today, I want to make an exception. I want to read something from K. And I would like you to excuse me for that. Can time stop? When will it stop, sir? How can it stop? Because that is there. Pradeep ji and everybody has spoken about that chronological time and the psychological time. Chronological time is inevitable. We can't function without that. So we are not concerned with that aspect of the matter. But the psychological time, what is it? It is basically the content of your consciousness. Your consciousness, your thought, your past, your memory, all these things are psychological time. So everybody has a different psychological time because chronological time is common to all of us. There is only one chronological time, I think. Psychological time is individualistic. It all depends on your experience, on your past. And everybody's past is different. So, as Swamiji has said, thought, time, and self are one. Yes, time is a thought. Psychological time is a thought, which is our self. So, he also said, life and death are one. The death of the psychological time, that is real life. So, what is it I want to read? We are all agreed, we all quote this statement that when the self is there, the other is not. When the self is not, the other is. We all quote it. But for most of us, the problem is in understanding what is self. And I want to say self is every content of your consciousness, which means jealousy, everything in your brain is the self. And I want to, when the self is not, the love is there. And there cannot be love so long as the self is there. Love and timelessness are one. Death of time is the generation of love in your heart. Without that, there is no love. And for that, kindly excuse me. I am reading a passage. Love cannot possibly exist or come into being like the fresh morning dew if the intellect is supreme. Intellect is the storehouse of our thoughts. So long as the intellect is supreme, there is no love. And our civilization has worshipped the intellect because it has created what? It has created theories about God. Because it has created principles, ideals. So, our theories about God, they are not our experience. They are all our scholarship. Somebody's experience, we are quoting. Because it has created principles, ideals. So, is love part of this stream, this consciousness? Can there be love when when your brain is full of theories of God? Can love exist when there is attachment to what? When there is attachment to a wife, my God, when there is attachment to a wife, to a husband, to children, can love exist when there is the memory of sexual attraction, a remembrance, a picture? Has love a continuity? Please go into it and find out. Because that thing does not exist in your heart, and that is why the world is in such a mess. Because there is no love in our hearts, the world is in a mess. And there cannot be love in our hearts so long as this content of consciousness is not understood and it is discarded. You cannot discard it possibly by exercise of will. You have to simply understand it and it will go. When you have an insight, it goes. So, can time end only when there is this emptiness of the mind? When the mind is empty of all this content, then there is cessation of time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Chidanandji, may I request you to say something for 10 minutes? Chidanandji, please.
I'm just joining.
Yeah.
I mean, I was hearing, but
Yeah.
yeah, my mic was off. So both camera and mic are on now. Yes, I have been listening carefully to Harshad ji and the other two speakers. Yes, wonderful. All these points put together, it has definitely shown the different dimensions of this psychological time. So as Prasad ji said, it's all content of consciousness. The human consciousness is full of these memories. However much we try, we take pride in certain things of the past. When I sometimes say in some get-togethers that I once heard Krishnaji directly when I didn't know much about him at all, nor did I understand anything about him. I think it was 1981 on the grounds of Vasant Vihar. I did not know anything about Vasant Vihar or Krishnamurti Foundation. I was at a nearby college, that is IIT Madras, and some friends took me there. Okay, so when I talk about it, I heard Krishnaji once directly. I find a tiny wave of pride rising in me. I had heard him directly. Many others have not seen him. Many others have not heard him. That is psychology, The I arises, some kind of. And there are many memories about which every one of us feel a little sad. Our heart sinks. So when our heart sinks, goes down, our self-esteem goes down, and on other occasions, when our self-esteem rises, to use a more colorful expression, we feel on top of the world. There is psychology, psychological memory is at work. It's a very fine distinction that forms the crux of this entire inquiry or self observation. The fine distinction is even the happiness at some memory doesn't mean there is egoism. For example, in this matter where I just once saw him from a distance, I was not even in the front rows. A tiny wave of happiness arises that, thank God, I went with my friends to listen to him, though I didn't understand a wee bit. That happiness is fine, but we should observe this operation of the mind, operation of our thought. Are we trying to get some mileage out of it? Are we trying to capitalize? Or, as the expression goes, are we trying to encash something? Then there is the rise of the self. Happiness by itself, a certain, I suppose, simple pleasure, has a place in life. About a jalebi that we may eat, about a song that we may hear. I must say, I must confess here that almost every one of the songs that Harshadji mentions have been my favorites also. 9 out of 10 he mentions are songs had. Those days I had very poor knowledge of Hindi, but I had developed a taste for these songs. Bhuli hui yaado, mujhe mat satao, and all that. So wonderful, because there is so much of relating with real life. We are troubled by our memories. Bhuli hui yaade. Memories which have sort of gone to background again arise, again come to the front and shake us up. So, in this matter of memories rising in us and either delighting us or causing some pain in us, there is a fine distinction between something which every human being anyhow has, something that any living being has, and then something that we allow to grow. We allow some memories to grow in strength, and what is worse, we want to use those memories to let somebody know, that we had that experience. You ever had? Did you ever go to Srinagar? I went 3 times. Did you ever do Kailash Yatra? I did twice. I have not done a Kailash Yatra, but I'm giving offhand examples. On something, don't we sometimes try to add a feather on our cap? Not because of anything we ourselves have done, but an uncle or aunt of ours. My uncle was chairman of Reserve Bank of India. What do you think? My aunt was very close to the Chief Minister of Orissa. You know that? So we want to sometimes bask in the glory of somebody while we have not really done it, or we have not actually ourselves been accomplished in that way. But what is called reflected glory, no more than basking in somebody else's glory, this is called reflected glory. Why are we after all this? So, inquiry. Therefore, this evening's topic, what is time and can time come to an end? This topic is closely connected to distinguishing between what is natural and what is added because of confusion, because of certain immaturity on our part. Elsewhere, it is considered as the outcome of spiritual ignorance, avidya, ajnana. These are the words used in some other schools of thought. There is a certain basic ignorance, and because of that ignorance, we are insecure, we are suffering, and we then want to somehow present a better image before others. We do so many things, as some book was titled, The Games That People Play. So you and I play some games and thereby get some advantage here and there. But in the process, alas, we are caught in psychological time. As you know, in Sanskrit, one word for time is kala. And kala in Sanskrit also means death. Kala is what makes us die. When somebody dies, they say, oh, my aunt became kalvash. कालवश हो गए, दैवाधीन हो गए, उनका स्वर्गवास हुआ. There are so many expressions. Kalvash, that is, he died. So Kala is Yama, Kala is ending of life itself. But here Kala is this very, very complex phenomenon of thought generating certain sense of, oh, I'm losing, not much time is left, and so on. All of you have shared wonderful, they all complement each other, and in attention, certain contradictions, certain silliness, certain childishness of our thought processes gets exposed, and that getting exposed leads to its ending, we could say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir, may I fix you for the next week?
Oh, you know what? This is 5th, next week, 12th. No, 12th, I have some engagement in Mysore in the evening.
Okay.
19th, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
19th,
Thanks,
I'm
sir.
back in Bombay and I'll be having a free
Okay.
Thursday.
Wagmare is not saying something. What is wrong with him?
I was also wondering, where is Dinesh ji today?
Anybody else? Otherwise, I will close the meeting.
Rajendran and Ravi Kaushal, they want, sir.
Oh, you wanted to say something,
Sir, can I say
Prasad ji?
something?
Why not? You are Rajendran sir, you are most welcome. आप अपनी पतंग उड़ा सकते हो.
Namaste.
Yeah, go on,
Good evening
please.
to all. Just,
Please.
yes, I'm just asking the self-talk, the voice in our head. Why we have to identify always with that voice? Is it our voice or is it the voice of? Then it is whose voice? If it is not ours, then whose voice it is? This voice we are listening 24/7. This is the voice of our own thinking. We call it as a loud thing. Sometimes there is a loud thinking. So why we identify ourselves with that self-talk, the voice in our head, and we obey whatever it says? It is the dictator who controls our life till birth to death. So then if the voice is not ours, then whose voice it is? It may be the voice of the knowledge. The knowledge may be technical knowledge to make to any livelihood, roti, kapda or makan, or the psychological knowledge. So this is the knowledge of what we were told by our parents, grandparents, neighbors, society, social media, WhatsApp forward messages, gossips, rumors, sacred books, what we read. It is the voice. It is not our voice. Our judgments, it's a voice of our judgments, guesswork, assumptions, presumptions. It is loud thinking. It's a voice of our thoughts or others, live or dead. Why should we identify ourselves with this voice? If we don't identify ourselves with this voice, is there any self? The me? Then who is that refused to identify? Who is that don't identify with this voice? Who is that fellow? Who says it is not my voice? So once if we see that the voice is not ours, then will there be silence? I am just asking. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wanted to say something?
Yeah, may I make a comment?
Yeah. Welcome, Harshad sir. Welcome.
Yes,
Please.
I think Pradeep ji said that when there is awareness, there is no thinking. But in my view, that this awareness, it can see whatever thoughts are coming. Like just now Rajendran said that there is something going on, loud thinking, and one can also feel it. So there is a kind of duality there, that there is some habitual thinking coming out by itself, and then there is a watching of it. And when there is a watching of it, maybe it slows down or stops. And then when there is no watching, then again that habitual thought thinking will go on. But in my view, that this is the initial stage of awareness when thinking stops. But in a more mature state of awareness, thinking can go on without doing any harm. And sometimes I give a kind of a analogy that when I lived in Neem House in Rishi Valley, in the darkness of the night, I used to hear some sound on the roof. And when I turned on the light, I saw that one rat was coming inside my room through a hole in the roof. And when the rat seen the light, it went out. It did not come in. And that happened several times. Every time when I turned on the light, the rat did not enter in my room. But after a few days, the rat could come even when there was a light. So what I'm trying to say, that when this awareness is not something, this awareness is natural awareness. In that state of natural awareness, come and go. They don't create any problem. So that, and this awareness is not a part of thinking. Because sometimes people say, I am aware, but there is no solution to my problem, that I am still angry or I am still fear. So the word awareness is not awareness, but awareness is something completely different, in a different plane than thinking. And in that awareness can see exactly what thoughts are coming and going. So that is one thing. And Prasadji said, this content of consciousness is time. But we do have content of consciousness, and still it is possible time. That means I may have some knowledge about a tree or a flower, but I can look at a tree or a flower or a human being without that knowledge, the content operating and coming when I see something. So we cannot be free from the content of consciousness, but we can be free from their operation, their coming in the foreground. So, and the third thing I like to say about quotation of Krishnamurti, Krishnamurti used to say, please don't quote, not even him, but we have to speak from our own understanding, from our own light. Because if somebody says, Aham Brahmasmi, then we will criticize that the person is quoting Upanishad or Buddham Sharanam Gacchami or something like that. So maybe it is better to speak from our own insight, and then we can answer any question people can ask about it. So I think this is the 3 points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ravi Kaushal. Ravi Kaushal ji.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You are visible. Thanks for that.
Thank you, sir.
Not for
Am I
audible.
audible, sir? Okay.
Ah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
audible and visible both.
So, sir, thank you, thank you. So, the today's topic is can time stop? So, I see it like that. It seems to me like that. When it seems to me like that, as if the time is asking, can the time stop? Can time stop? So, if the self is asking this, if I'm asking this, can time stop? Then it still is the continuity of the self. So that's one thing. That's how the that's how this uh, this self continues. That's one thing. So and Chidanand Swami also talked about love and death go together. So in this context, that death is something, death of the self, death of the self, and the death of the psychological time. So the death of the psychological time, the question when we ask in terms can the psychological time end is one thing, and to see the movement of the psychological time in one's own life is another thing, is totally another thing. That's one thing I'm saying. So in that manner, if you talk people, discuss people, how can I end the time and all that, it has no meaning. But to see the movement of the psychological time, I think it has some meaning. And Harshad Parekh sometimes talks about my thinking stop, and this is one thing. Whenever somebody says that my mind stop, my thoughts stop, My thought stop. Who are you then without the thought? So it's very subtle thing to see. And then Prasad Mulupuri sir said about this, every past is different. My past is different, your past is different. I'm saying that the nature of the past, the identification with the past, the nature is same. Content may be different, the degree of the content may be different, but the nature is same. So if we see that thing, then I think we can see the whole. And then I see that why Krishnamurti and all talked about this, ending of time. What times, how time, what is the problem with the time? There is a chronological time, there is a psychological time, we all understand. And then the psychological time, like there are contents. And when I'm saying that I will end my anger, I will see that and I will end that, or I will meditate. All these things, what this thing is doing, to see that is the only thing which has some meaning. All other can be end thought, or my thought end has no meaning at all. No meaning at all. Only thing is that whenever there is a movement of the psychological time, do you see that or not? In your attention, you see that or not is the only thing. Whenever you say that I will end the content of my consciousness, I am growing, my consciousness is expanding. It has all these things all creating the time actually. You are creating time. You are thinking in terms of time. There is a continuity in the time. The self is in continuity. To see that, to see this movement has only that thing that has a spark. All else has no meaning. So this is one thing I'm saying. Though to end
Ravi
all
sir,
these, yes, sir.
sir, time is brief.
Okay. So I'm done. Thank you. Thank
May
you.
Thank
I
you very
make
much.
one,
Thank you very much.
Kamlesh ji, may I say something? 1 minute?
Yeah, please,
Yes, sir, yes.
please go ahead.
Yeah, who are you? That is what Ravi, that when thought has ended, what is there? I would say what exists is a pure awareness, or what Raman Maharshi would call true self. It's a pure awareness, is your real nature. And these thoughts, they come and go, but in the background, that awareness, it can see everything clearly, and that is what you are really.
What is
And that,
the
yeah,
how you see awareness and you when you are describing about
Awareness,
awareness, how you see awareness
awareness
and
is disguised as
no,
person.
you can't
Awareness
see.
disguised as person.
Yeah,
yeah.
awareness can be seen, it can be
Yeah.
felt. Yeah,
Yeah.
Awareness can be felt. Okay.
yeah.
Feeling and all that are all these things, all movements are in awareness. But anyhow, whenever you conclude something, I think then there is some center is there. That's how I think I see that. So to conclude awareness or to conclude anything, my thought stop is something I don't buy.
If, please,
Uh, uh,
please,
uh,
please let me say one thing. You
Yes,
can
yes.
take cognition of that. Recognition is also past. If you recognize something, it is also a past.
It's now.
And now let me end it, please. Next
Okay.
time we
Thank
will.
you, sir. Thank you,
Okay.
sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Kamlesh, please end it. It is already
Thank you.
time is over.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.